This is the Ballroom State of Mind podcast, episode 126, Motivation Killers. Welcome back, everybody, to the Ballroom State of Mind podcast. I just came back from Miami Vibe, which was fun. How nice is Miami? Okay, I've never been there before, but I gotta say, the weather was perfect. The beach was perfect. The comp was fun and chill and beautiful. And in fact, we did this nightclub event on a boat. So there's that. It was fun and I had a great time. My dancing was a little rusty. It was a little bit of a mixed bag in terms of my results, but that's okay. I felt like it was a little bit of a transitional comp where I'm like shaking off some rust and working through it. I'm going to go to People's Choice at the end of this month, which is my favorite one. I've decided. I love it. I missed it last year. I sincerely regretted that. I just like it. There's just enough competition. It's not small, but it's not huge. I love the resort, the Westin Kierland. And because it's a resort, a lot of the dancers, when they're not dancing, they kind of hang around. There's this big courtyard. The restaurants are good. And everybody kind of hangs around and there's like a lazy river. And so there's like a lot of socializing that happens that I really like. So I'm really looking forward to that one. And then after that, I don't know. I don't have plans for the rest of the year. I'm not sure if I want to do the big ones this year. I'm like just focusing a little bit more on my family and home. And I don't feel as much of a desire to go pedal to the metal. I did that. 2023 was really pedal to the metal year for me, like really pushing. And 2024, I scaled it back a little bit, but not enough. And so I'm feeling ready to just pace myself. So we'll see. Right now I'm planning on People's Choice and then we'll go from there. Let's talk today about feeling motivated. I think every dancer at some point or another deals with a lack of motivation. And we might call this just like a feeling where you're kind of dragging yourself to practice. You might feel some dread. You might be wondering why you're doing all of this. And if you still like it, you might be thinking about quitting altogether. And I just think motivation is a funny thing because motivation is a feeling. And to me, when I ask people about motivation and I ask my clients to like rate themselves on motivation, I talk about like, do we feel passionate? Do we feel excited? Do we feel interested? Do we feel joy? Do we feel enthusiasm? So it's a general, doesn't have to be strong, but it's a general moving toward something or moving forward with something that you're pursuing. So there's this just little bit of energy moving towards it, right? And when we're demotivated, it doesn't feel like that. Motivation is finicky because it's not always constant. It's a feeling, and like all feelings, it comes and goes. Sometimes it feels really elusive, like mysterious, like sometimes I feel motivated and sometimes I don't. And while occasionally we can just find ourselves feeling motivated first, I often find that motivation actually comes later. It actually comes late to the game. Like once we get started, once we make a decision to move forward with something, then motivation, that kind of forward moving energy, that sort of like momentum shows up late, fashionably late. So sometimes we can't wait for motivation to come. We need to just get moving and motivation will show up. But that being said, I do think there are some things that we don't necessarily recognize are hurting our ability to feel motivated. It's making it harder to keep moving forward. So I want to explore some of those today. I'm going to give you 8 things that kill your motivation. And this isn't an exclusive list. I'm sure there's others that we could think about, but these are the 8 I want to give you today. It turns out that a lot of what can kill our motivation is actually rooted in how we think, how we think about our progress, how we think about our value, and how we think about our goals and approach our goals. So today I'm going to walk you through 8 of the most probably common, we could call them motivation killers for ballroom dancers. And for each one, I'm going to give you a different way to think about it. So what you can do instead to kind of reignite your drive and your focus and even your joy. Like, let's keep having fun. You know that I'm a big advocate for having fun in your dancing. Okay, so number 1 motivation killer that I want to offer to you is comparison. You guessed it. So whether it's watching somebody else practice in the studio, or you're scrolling through highlight reels on Instagram. It's so easy to look at another dancer and go, oh man, I should be further along. They're so much better than me, or I'll never be that good. I myself am definitely guilty of seeing like professionals dancing on Instagram or whatever, or even seeing them in person and then watching my own videos and being like, oh my gosh, I should just quit because I just don't look like that. And so I've been there. But here's the thing, comparison drains your energy because it shifts your focus from your own path to someone else's. So your energy is being diverted, not on your dancing, to focusing on what other people are doing. And it makes you forget just how far you've come and what you're working towards. So the focus is on what you lack or how your difference from them is somehow less than. And that is demotivating and it's discouraging. And it's going to lead you to quit, like how I said, I should just quit right now since I don't look like the professionals. That's logical. But it will also lead to just half-hearted effort or even just like a general bitterness, which is just not going to be good fuel for your dancing. That's never good fuel for your dancing. Comparison is terrible fuel. Okay. So instead, when it comes to comparison, I like to point you to curiosity. So when you find yourself comparing, instead of just like noticing that they're better than you and then beating yourself up with that, ask yourself, what can I learn from what I see? This is a very good question. I like to ask, what is it that I like about what they're doing? Why is this appealing? What can I learn from their doing well? How can I be inspired by this rather than discouraged? So to reframe this or to give you some other thoughts to consider, first of all, there's no such thing as behind. So when you're comparing yourself to somebody and you're thinking, oh, I'm so behind, I should be further along. No, that's not a thing. Okay. We're on a different timeline. We're on our own timeline. And I personally don't see the value in rushing. I don't know why we do that. But here's some other things to think about. If someone else can get there, then it's certainly possible that I can too. Or I can see what I like about their dancing and I can apply that to my own. What do I want to steal from them? What do I want to borrow from them to improve my dancing? And it's good that I'm able to identify where I want to get to and that I can identify what I like. We're just going to stop using that against ourselves. Okay. So that's comparison. Number 2, perfectionism. And along with this, I would say all or nothing thinking. And you all have this. There's very few of you that I talk to who don't have some level of perfectionism. And perfectionism just makes us believe, again, that if I can't look like that professional and I can't look that perfect, then I might as well not do it. Right? So perfectionism makes us believe that if we can't do it perfectly, we're failing. And perfectionism always includes all or nothing thinking. I'm perfect or I'm a failure. I'm first or I'm a loser. Okay. So suddenly we're missing one practice or something, or we're having an off day and we're doomed. We ruined it all. And it makes our motivation really fragile. I had a dancer once tell me about how they messed up one heat at the comp and it ruined the whole weekend. Okay. That's how powerful the perfectionism can be, that it takes one imperfection and it erases everything else. So it's like, oh, I got a flat tire. And so we just take our knife and stab the other 3 and just like, forget it. Too late. One thing went wrong. So I might as well just give up. And the reality is, if we're indulging in this all or nothing thinking, we can't be all of the time. So we're going to interpret anything less than that as nothing. So if we're talking about all or nothing, you're going to be nothing. That's all you're going to see. And you're going to feel less than, and you're going to feel not enough. And that's going to be very demotivating for you. So perfectionism is very demotivating. And the antidote here is permission to be imperfect. And I know you hate that. I know that perfectionists, it feels like torture, but that's only because you think that perfection is required to get the success that you're looking for. And it's not true. Everything you want to accomplish, you can accomplish with flaws, with mistakes. All successful people who accomplish anything do it imperfectly. I promise you. All the flaws, all the mistakes, they come along with them. And in fact, Now, that's not like a bummer. It's actually like what fuels the success. The success comes on a pile of failure. And literally nobody is succeeding or accomplishing or getting validated and winning because they did everything just right. So you got to be able to give yourself credit for showing up, for putting in effort, for working through awkward stages, for doing things not great a lot of the time and just trying again and again. Imperfection actually isn't a bummer. You say that again for the people in the back. Imperfection is not a bummer. It's a fact of life. It's part of the human condition. And when you're trying to be perfect, you're literally trying to be superhuman. It doesn't exist. Perfection is unattainable. It's unattainable. It's an impossible standard. Literally, it's an ideal. And it's an ideal that we reach toward, but it's never something you get to claim. And the pressure that comes with perfectionism, it's so heavy. It's so pressure filled. And sometimes that pressure feels like motivation, but there are better ways to motivate than fear, because truly perfectionism is rooted in fear and insecurity. Okay. So here's kind of a reframe is we want to focus on progress over perfection. Some is better than none. Some practice is better than none. And some practice might be better than, I plan to just practice 6 times this week. And since I only got 3, then I failed. No, some is enough. Some is better than none. To be imperfect is to be human, and to be human is interesting, and it's magnetic, and it's lovable. I've said it before, but I think perfectionism is actually kind of weird, and we actually relate to people who are imperfect. And rather than all or nothing thinking, I can exist in the middle. I can put myself on a spectrum and I can put myself in the middle, and I can have everything that I want. You can have everything that you want. Perfection not required. Okay, number 3. Number 3 thing that is possibly killing your motivation is unclear or unrealistic expectations. So if you don't know what you're aiming for, okay, or if you're expecting things to happen way too fast, then you're going to probably feel demotivated. You're going to get discouraged. So goals that are too big, and this goes along with perfectionism, because perfectionists often set goals that are too big, too far in the future. They're like this impossible standard, and then they're always falling short of it. So if you are choosing goals that are too big or too hard to reach or too far into the future, you're going to find yourself getting demotivated. Goals that are too far in the future require you to push hard for too long without a reward. Okay. And that's demotivating. We got to have some rewards along the way. Even if your reward is just a pat on the back, good job. So we don't want them too big. We don't want them too far. Expecting yourself to move and progress faster than you're actually able is demotivating. But we do want to progress, right? We do want to move forward. So consider that if your goal is, I just want to quote unquote, get better at dancing. That's hard to measure. It's hard to measure when we've reached a successful point. If your goal is, I want to win my category after 3 competitions, you might be setting yourself up. It's measurable, but you might be setting yourself up for disappointment in this case, because you're expecting a result that's actually outside of your control. And that is also a recipe, at least partly, for discouragement. So instead, we want goals that are clear. Like we know what they are. We know where we're going. They're achievable. Like we get excited and we get motivated when we feel like we can do it. And especially if it's just a little bit outside of what we can do and a little bit outside of what we think we're capable of, because it needs to feel doable to draw us towards it. If it feels not doable, we don't get drawn towards it because it feels like, well, I'm not going to hit that. And then that's going to suck. And then I'm going to feel bad. If you choose a goal, like I'm going to practice this routine 3 times this week, that is measurable. That is clear. That is attainable. And that might be something that's a little bit of a challenge for me to do with my schedule. So I'm like a little bit more drawn towards that. Or we can choose something that's a little bit vague, like improving my connection with my partner during these certain figures, because sometimes things in dance are not exactly measurable, but except when looking in retrospect and seeing, oh, I've improved in this way. But choose goals that feel like a stretch, but they're doable with some work. And choose a timeline that stretches you, but it doesn't stress you to a breaking point. So achievable, challenging goals that are doable in a time frame that allows you to get the reward, get the pat on the back to help keep you moving forward and not burning out or giving up. So kind of a reframe, some things, the thoughts that I want to offer you is that like these small wins along the way are the building blocks of the big ones. Think about your goals as I know where I'm going and I know how to get there. And another one I like for this is stretch, don't stress. Okay. It's challenging. We want to be challenged because it's not as motivating to achieve things that feel super easy, but we want to be challenged, but just enough. Okay. Not too much. Number 4, something that's demotivating, and you've all described this to me, is a lack of progress. So we might describe this as a plateau. We might describe this as like, I'm not getting better, but sometimes you are making progress, but it just doesn't feel like it. You just can't see it. So you're working hard and maybe for a while and nothing seems to be changing. And I emphasize seems to be changing. I have a whole podcast on this. You should revisit. It's episode 83 about plateaus. But progress in dancing and in ballroom is often subtle. Or in that podcast, we definitely talk about how there's spurts where we'll have a lot of change in a short amount of time and we can see that progress. And that's very motivating. And then we'll end up in a plateau. And we're believing that nothing's happening, and that's very demotivating. But again, progress in ballroom is often subtle. Like your frame is better, right? You're recovering faster from a glitch where you forgot the choreography, or you're staying mentally engaged and mentally focused longer. But because it's not flashy, you might not be getting yourself credit. So staying in what we perceive as a plateau can get tiring, and it can feel like you're doing a lot of work with no payoff. And that's just cue demotivation, right? But here's how we can kind of address that is keep a dance journal, keep some sort of like documentation of what you are doing. Because even if it doesn't feel like your dancing is changing, we are progressing every time, every rep, every practice, every lesson, stuff is happening. Record videos. Look back at your old videos. I looked back at some old videos and I could see the progress that I'd made, even though I didn't believe it existed. Okay. You have to celebrate also just the feelings of improvement, not just tangible results. So here's some reframe. Here's some thoughts. Just because you can't see it now doesn't mean it's not working. A lot is happening behind the scenes. Sometimes when I'm in a plateau, I imagine a duck who's floating on the surface of water, and on the surface it looks calm. It looks like nothing's happening, but their little feet are just paddling away to keep them there. And so the feet are working double time. There's stuff happening. So when it seems like I'm not progressing, I know a spurt is coming. This is just my mind and my body just integrating all the changes and progress that I've made. We kind of exist in cycles, and we have cycles of fits and spurts. And so we have these times where we have spurts, and then we have times where our body kind of recalibrates and our brain recalibrates and our neurons are connecting and stuff is like just working itself out. And then all of a sudden we have another spurt again. So I like to just think, oh, if I'm in a plateau, it's like, oh, there's lots going on. And my next burst is on the way. It's just around the corner. I just got to keep at it. Okay. Number 5, negative self-talk is very demotivating. It's so terrible. It's probably like the most impactful thing you can do to improve your motivation is to check out your self-talk. Okay. Have you ever walked off the dance floor and been like, well, that was terrible, or that looked stupid, and just kind of beat yourself up, bullied yourself? Negative self-talk, it doesn't just hurt your feelings. Okay. It chips away at your motivation. Like imagine you have somebody criticizing you constantly and you can't do anything right, you give up. Okay. If your inner voice is constantly tearing you down eventually you're going to stop showing up at all. It's incredibly demotivating to try to please a bully that can never be pleased. So practice noticing the voice and then shifting it. And you don't have to lie to yourself. You just need to be fair. You can say that wasn't my best round, but there was good things that happened. There was things we can learn from that. So even if that wasn't my best round, I maybe stayed connected with my partner, or maybe my brain dropped out and I forgot my choreography, but I kept going and we recovered and I flushed it pretty quick. So reframe this and ask yourself, what would I say to a partner or a friend who was feeling this way? And by the way, we don't have to be outright positive all the time. There's actually a lot of research that shows just being less negative, just like not being so negative, creates huge improvements in your actions, in your motivation, all of it. Okay. So we can at least try on some encouragement rather than criticism. All right. Number 6, something that's demotivating that might be a little bit surprising is an over reliance on external validation. This is those of us who really like results, and we really like to win, and we really like to please our teachers, and we really like external validation. And I don't have a problem with that. I like external validation. However, if your only source of motivation, your main source, is judges' scores or your coach's praise, these outside sources, you're going to be on a roller coaster, because when they're not happy with you and you don't get good results, you're going to be emotionally down and you're going to be unmotivated. And then when you get good scores, you're going to be up, and it's completely dependent on things outside of you. And I just don't like that for you. When you give external validation too much power, those results affect how you feel about yourself. And that's dangerous ground, because in ballroom dancing, the results are very subjective. And it depends on so many factors. And so I don't want your worth or your value or your self-esteem or your motivation dependent on such a subjective platform. It becomes about your self-worth. And then you're gonna dance to like not lose, which is different. It's from a fear-based place, or it's going to be dancing from a tense place. We're dancing to avoid embarrassment or to avoid failure. And that's just not as ideal. That's not what you want. You want to dance from joy and presence and confidence, and not from kind of that fear-based place of trying to control everybody's feelings outside of you. Okay. So in this case, you would be preoccupied with what others think of you: teachers, coaches, judges, partners. And there's going to be competitions where you dance well and you don't place. And there's going to be competitions and lessons rather where your coach pushes you hard. And if your motivation is tied only to positive feedback, you're going to start to feel defeated when it doesn't come. And you'll find your mind preoccupied with the results and the validation rather than the actual dancing, the actual mechanics and the expression of your dancing. You can't be in the moment, in your body, experiencing your dancing, expressing, being intentional about it, and in the heads of other people at the same time. Okay, you can't. So return to yourself, return to your internal validation. Why did you start dancing? What does it give you? Return to your bodies. What do you feel? How can you use the results as a tool, but not give it the power in your experience? Not all of it. Okay. Let your motivation mostly come from internal sources, and let the external ones be sort of a confirmation of what you already know. That's where I like to exist from. A reframe, some thoughts you can think is like, my worth is set. There's no earning it. It's already set. Okay. Your worth isn't up for scoring. You could say, I use results as a tool and I don't let them control me or my experience. And another thing I like to think is that it's okay that I want external validation, but I don't need it. I don't need it all the time. Okay. Like I love wanting it, but I don't need it, because coming from a needy place is just not what we want. Okay. Number 7, burnout. Of course, mental, physical, emotional burnout is probably hurting your motivation. And so sometimes the problem is physical or emotional, or you just might be tired. And when we're tired, we don't want to get up and go. Motivation feels like energy, and sometimes we don't have any. Sometimes we've been doing too much, pushing too long. Sometimes we can get mental burnout from overthinking, from ruminating. Okay. Dancers often push through fatigue until they're completely drained. But you can't pour from an empty cup. If your body and your mind are exhausted, motivation is naturally going to dip. So include some real rest. You don't always have to be pushing so hard all the time. Schedule it. Take time off. Sometimes if I've had a few competitions, I take several weeks off. I'll come off a comp and I'll say, I just need a week or two. And I just let myself rest. I let myself integrate what happened. I don't necessarily want to get right back to the drawing board. And sometimes my teacher does. It drives him crazy. But like incorporating real rest can prevent burnout and help keep you motivated in the long term. And I don't mean guilt-filled rest, where I rest and I think the whole time about what I should be doing and that I should be practicing and that I should do XYZ. No. Actual intentional recovery. And then check in with yourself and see what you actually need. Are you pushing too much? Have you been pushing for too long? Kind of like at the beginning of this podcast, I've been pushing for 5 years, pretty hardcore, 2 double lessons a week. I don't even know how many comps I've done at this point. But I went from a newcomer to open rhythm in 5 years, and I'm kind of tired. And that's with like my business and my husband's business and our kids and our family. And I'm kind of tired. So I'm intentionally this year scaling back and resting so that I don't get burned out. Okay. Are you suppressing emotion and not dealing with some mental and emotional things that need some direct attention? And when we don't address that stuff, it doesn't go away. We just kick the can down the line and it's often worse. So here's a reframe: is rest isn't quitting. Rest isn't slacking. Rest is actually a calculated part of high performance. Rest or recovery is actually work. It's a different kind of work. There's a lot happening when you're recovering. A lot happens at rest. So let's give from our abundance rather than trying to give from our depletion and just like push forward. Why are we glorifying that? Honor your body, honor your mind, ask what they need, and you're going to get far more out of yourself in the long run. Okay, last one. Number 8 is a fear of being judged or a fear of failing. Okay, so this is kind of a sneaky one because sometimes we say, oh, I just don't feel motivated, but really we're afraid. We're afraid of being seen. We're afraid of messing up. We're afraid of not being good enough. We're afraid of failing. So we kind of put things off. We procrastinate. We don't try very hard. We like half show up, or we kind of avoid things. And we don't try too hard because, or we don't want it too much, kind of act like we don't care. So that when we fail, we can say it's because, oh, I just didn't try very hard. So we're afraid to go all in. We're holding back. So we hide a little bit and we just say we aren't that motivated. So this is kind of a sneaky one. So instead of waiting until you feel fearless, I want you to build the habit of just showing up, even with the fear. Be willing to risk it. I mean, start small, but practice being visible. Let imperfection be part of the deal. But let's just not be so afraid of failing. Like, what if we really did go all in? So here's kind of some thoughts or some reframes: is your job is to show up, not to be perfect. So you're either going to win or you're going to learn. There's no failing. We don't need to fear failure. Failure's part of the deal. Failure lives in the same neighborhood as success. You can't get to success's house without passing the houses that have failure in them. Okay. Be willing to risk failing to really see what you can do. You owe that to yourself. Don't hold back. Don't hide. So in conclusion, there are 8 motivation killers that are probably the most common that I see, and kind of what you can do instead or how you can reframe it. Motivation doesn't mean that we're going to feel excited every day. Okay. But it does mean that we want to feel like we're forward moving. We're committed, even when it gets hard, but it's knowing how to like find some passion, find some energy, find some excitement or enthusiasm in just a little bit, just a little bit. And again, remember, motivation kind of comes late to the party, fashionably late. So shift your mindset, like work on finding that motivation within you and stay connected to your reasons for why you're doing this. Pick just one of these 8. Just do that. Just pick one of these 8 that you recognize in yourself right now. Try on the reframe. Give yourself some grace to be human. Move towards it. Have some courage and see if the motivation doesn't start to return. Okay. Thanks for listening today. I'll see you next time on the Ballroom State of Mind. Okay, bye.